Alright, if you don't really have any idea what to do with for loops, this is the place to come. And perhaps you're having a hard time making for loops run backwards, which is the common problem in this first assignment. So let's take a look at how to do those two things. Load up idle, and we'll start right in with a new file. So the general idea about a for loop, of course, is that it's a loop that runs a certain number of times. So there's three things you need to know, three values in a for loop. The first one is what is the starting number. So the starting value you want to start counting at. Secondly, you need to know your ending value. And thirdly, you need to know how many numbers you want to count by, so the count value. So in other words, if you want to count by 2s or 3s or 5s or 10s. And so if you know those three things, you can do it. Now, the most important one is the ending value. You can actually skip the other two if they're normal, as in you want to count by 1s and you want to start at 0. So I could put this here, like 0 is the normal and 1 is the normal, but this one has no normal. It doesn't know how many times you want to do it. You have to say this one, so specified. But if you want to override these, you can do it too. So I'll show you how to do that. Basically, you make a for loop. So you say for. Then you need some sort of variable right here. And it could be any variable you want. You make up the name, and it just goes right here. You don't have to set it up ahead of time or anything like that. So the name of this badge is iteration. And the idea of a loop, of course, is that it makes many, many runs through a loop, and they call those iterations. That is why, if you look up how to do for loops online and stuff like that, you will almost always see that they use the variable I when they create a for loop. It's just a thing that people do since I was a kid making for loops, and you can still see it being used today. So I have to teach it to you, of course. So that is weird. You just say, okay, take this variable, and what you want to do is you want to set up a range. So if I want to count to, let's just say 25. I can do that. And now what do I do in this loop? Well, whatever I want to repeat. So I'm going to do, especially in these assignments, what we repeat is going to be very easy, kind of basic stuff, but theoretically, you can make a whole program. What if you had lives, right? And you want to do something 3 times because they have 3 lives. Well, there's other ways to do it, but you could imagine a for loop that runs the whole program 3 times. And so therefore you'd get 3 lives. So you could put anything here. I'm going to do the simplest possible thing, which is print I, so I can show you what happens, because I is a variable. And what happens is I starts at 0, which is our starting value, and every time through the loop it automatically increases the value of I. So when I print I, it says, okay, it's 0, then it's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3, and when it gets to 25, it'll stop. So let's take a look at how this works. For loops, okay, let's see. Alright, so see, there it goes down the screen, and it started at value 0. And what it really did is it counted 25 times. So when it gets to 24, it stops. When it gets to the 25th, then it's like, I'm out of here. So it doesn't ever print the number 24. It stops when it sees the number 25. Yeah, sorry, I said 24, but it does print the number 24. It stops when it sees the number that you put in the parentheses. So it stops before this number. Basically what it does is it tests this number, and it says, oh, I is 25, so that's outside the range that I set up. It's kind of like the range is less than. So in some ways you could do this with a while loop. In a while loop you could say, okay, I equals 0, while I is less than 25, I plus equals 1, and then print I. Right, so you could do all these things. But you can see that a for loop is a lot faster when you just want to go through a loop, because it automatically adds 1, it automatically starts at 0. So it's just a little bit of a shortcut if you want to think about it that way. And there's some other things we use for loops for later. This is really setting up a whole nother badge where the for loops will be used quite a bit. And one more thing before I let you go. No, a couple more things. So this is for loops in general. Now, what if you want to override these numbers? So hey, I want to start at number 10 and I want to count to 25. So you put two numbers in there. Now the first number is the starting value and the second number is the ending value. So I haven't done anything with the third number yet. We'll add that in a second. See, it starts at 10. Again, it ends before it gets to the actual number that you put in there for the ending value. And then finally, let's say that we start at, well, see, I just want to start at 1. I want to count to 250, but I want to count by tens. So this is my count value, which by default is counting by ones. Now I'm going to add 10. So it's basically saying I plus equals 10 in the background automatically, so we don't have to do it ourselves. See, though, now you may have expected it to say, 10, 20, 30, but I said start at number 1. So it was like, okay, I'll start at number 1 and I'll add 10, which got me 11, 21, 31. So, if you want to avoid that, maybe I should have said start at 10. So it didn't even give me a 0. And then it would go 10, 20, 30, 40, right? So that's one little trick that happens here. And then finally, I want to show you how to do a count backwards, because this number here, this is the whole point. This number here could be a negative. So, hey, I want to count by negative 5s. Now, what's this going to do? Start at 10, count in 2, we reach 250 by negative 5s. Is that going to work? No, it's done. It doesn't even print 10. Why? Because by counting by negative 5, it immediately goes down and it says, oh, I'm outside the range, 250. They don't want me to go that direction. So what you'd have to do in this case is you'd have to change the first number to be the big number and the second number to be the end number. So now it'll count starting at 250. When it gets to 0, it'll stop and it'll go down by 5. By the way, one more tip. If I don't want it to be on separate lines, if I want it to be on the same line, I can say end the line. Normally the end line, or the end of a print statement, is automatically an enter command, which is like a invisible key, right? You can't like type it. But I can say, no, I want you to end with a space, and that will give me putting it all on one line. Now see, I didn't actually end with a space, I ended with nothing. So it did 250 and then did 245 and then did 240, so you can see that. So maybe I say, no, I want to end with a space, and then it will do that. And we're done. I'm just going to type in a random thing here and see if something happens, because I've always wanted to know this, and here I am doing it live, recording. Oh, look at that. See, /t means tabs, and so you can make things tab and kind of line them up, which is kind of cool. Just a little extra space. So there you go. And have fun.